Hello, Vlad, with a new story from my channel of amazing stories from life. The rain poured down incessantly. The wind howled. Lightning split the sky, and instantly the lights went out. A second later, the independent generators began to howl, bringing the fluorescent lamps back to life. Zoya Filipovna wiped her forehead and looked at her watch. It was 12 to 12, and there was no respite. Zoya, the babies have broken out in the third delivery room. Lilia, her best friend and colleague, called from the hallway, and Svetkov and Motrova were there, and Dr. Rashidov was alone on the entire floor. Coming! Zoya responded, but her legs felt like they were wearing a crown. She left the operating room, closing the door behind her. Behind that door lay something that could no longer be undone. Her daughter, Lenachka, lay there pale, and her baby had not come out. The tiny heartbeat had only lasted a few minutes. Zoya Filipovna didn't blame the unfamiliar doctor. He'd come here for a shift, to get some help. The maternity hospital in the neighboring town had closed, and everyone in labor was being brought there. Oh, God, why? A bitter thought flashed through her mind. I'd brought so many children into the world, but I couldn't save my grandson. But I couldn't think about that now. She was a midwife, and in the next room, another woman was screaming in pain. Zoya unclenched her cramped fingers, straightened her back, and walked down the hall. Zoya, are you okay? Lilka grabbed her shoulder and looked into her eyes. Lena, what's going on? Trouble, Zoya whispered. She was silent for a few seconds and then snapped, we're working. Her voice was even cold. It always became like that when a hurricane was raging inside. Lilka peered at her friend in bewilderment, but she had already disappeared behind the door. Zoya entered the third delivery room. A thin girl was thrashing on the couch. About 19 years old, no more. Dark circles under her eyes, bluish lips. What's her name? Asked the midwife, putting on gloves. Anya. The patient exhaled. I can't take it anymore. Breathe as I say. Zoya's voice became softer, almost maternal. A contraction overwhelmed the girl again with force. She grabbed the edge of the couch. Zoya took her hand and squeezed tightly. Look at me. Only at me. Inhale, exhale. Well done, once again. The labor was difficult. Anya was too weak. The midwife was cheerful. Not everything was all right here. Either anemia, or something worse. They should have called the doctor, but Rashidov was in the operating room now. He had an emergency cesarean. The first baby was born with a quiet squeak. One more, Zoya whispered. Do you hear, Anya? Come on, darling, one last push. But Anya didn't hear anymore. Her eyes rolled back, her head fell back. Zoya felt the pulse disappear under her fingers. She delivered the second child, simultaneously pressing the panic button. The second girl was larger, louder. Zoya placed her on the table and rushed to Anya. CPR, artificial respiration. Her hands acted automatically, but somewhere deep down she knew they wouldn't make it in time. The resuscitation team arrived, but soon it was all over. They couldn't save Anya. The midwife stood at the sink. The water kept pouring. In the mirror's reflection, her face was gray, haggard, alien. Two newborn babies lay on the table. Both were asleep, twins wrapped in identical swaddling clothes. Zoya froze. The thought that had just flashed through her head was monstrous. No, this can't be done. This is madness. But the thought wouldn't go away. Lena was lying in the adjacent operating room, still dazed from the anesthesia. Zoya had yet to tell her daughter the terrible truth. Watch her eyes fade, watch her last hope crumble. Lena was already barely holding on. The baby's father had abandoned her after learning she was pregnant. She wanted this baby, she wanted to prove that she could handle it, that she would be a good mother. Her hands were already working on their own. She took the first little one, carried it to the nursery, put it in a box, attached a tag with her daughter's name, then came back, took the second one, the smaller one, and carried it to another box. "Zoya, what's wrong?" Lilka bumped into her friend at the door, and something incomprehensible flashed in her gaze. "Nothing, I'm registering it," Zoya answered, without looking up. "And where is the second one?" "Didn't survive, I already brought it." Quote. When Lena woke up after the anesthesia, Zoya brought her the newborn. "My daughter, look, she's healthy, strong, and crying. That means she has light, good lungs." Lena looked at the child with detachment, even somehow indifferently. "Beautiful," she said quietly. "And he called." Zoya clenched her fists. "He is this smug student who got into Lena's soul with promises, and then disappeared as soon as he found out about the pregnancy. He didn't call and he won't. Forget him. I can't. I love him." Lena closed her eyes, and tears flowed down her cheeks. Zoya was silent. The words stuck somewhere in her chest, heavy as stones. She stole someone else's child and gave it to her daughter. And all for what? So that Lena would not suffer, to keep a man who does not love her. Madness, monstrous, unforgivable madness. But there was no turning back. A tall, thin man with a confused face stood in the corridor. "How is she, Anya?" "They don't tell me anything, and I couldn't save her." Zoya lowered her eyes. "Forgive me, Leonid, but we did everything we could." "Really?" He swayed, grabbed the wall. Zoya stretched out hand to support him, but the man recoiled. "Oh, the children?" he asked hoarsely. "Our twins. One girl is alive, the other is also gone." Quote. Leonid sank down on the bench and buried his face in his palms. His shoulders began to shake. Zoya stood nearby, not knowing what to say. "Well, what can you say to a man who was robbed of half his family in 1 hour?" "Show her," he asked after a few minutes. "Show me my daughter Marina." Zoya led him into the nursery. Leonid looked for a long time at the little one sleeping in the box. Then he carefully touched her palm with his finger. Marina squeezed his fist, and tears welled up in the man's eyes again. "It looks like Anya," he whispered. "But I can handle it, even alone. I'll definitely manage." Zoya nodded, unable to utter a word. She felt something inside her slowly crumbling, breaking into pieces. The years went by. Lena turned out to be a lousy mother. She went out with her friends, dated men, spent money on clothes and cosmetics. Zoya raised Irachka. She fed her, dressed her, took her to kindergarten, then to school. The girl grew up obedient and quiet. She learned not to ask her mother for attention, which she still did not give. Quote. "Granny, why doesn't my mother love me?" asked Kaktera when she was about 8 years old. Zoya stroked her head, and her heart sank with pain. Quote. "She loves, she just doesn't know how to show it." "It's not true," Ira said stubbornly. "I can see it, because you are not her daughter." "I really wanted to shout at my grandmother, because I stole you from your father? Because I'm a monster." But she remained silent. When Irachka turned 10, Zoya fell ill. The diagnosis sounded like a death sentence. Oncology, stage 4. "How much?" she asked the doctor, and her voice was calm. "A year, maybe 2, if I'm lucky." Payback, Zoya thought. She didn't cry, she just sat in the office, looking out the window, and thought about how she could see everything up there. So her punishment had come for her. Lilia visited her often, brought her fruit, pies, sat next to her and held her hand. One day, Zoya couldn't take it anymore. Lilia, this is all for my sins. What sins? What are you talking about? It's nothing, Zoya shook her head. All sorts of thoughts were creeping into her head. She lasted 2 years. The last months were hell. Pain, medicine, oblivion. Irochka came to her every day after school, read books aloud, told her about her lessons. Zoya listened and thought, forgive me, someday you'll find out the truth and you'll hate me, and you'll be right. When her mother died, Lena had to go back to work. She got a job as a nurse in the children's department of the same hospital where my mother once worked. Irochka often came to her after school, sat in the doctor's office, and did her homework. One such day, a girl with appendicitis was admitted to the department. Her father brought her late in the evening when the surgeon on duty had gone to operate in the next building. Leonid got lost in the corridors. He went up to the wrong floor, took a wrong turn, and suddenly saw a girl sitting on the windowsill with a math textbook. Brown eyes, dark hair. He stopped dead in his tracks. Quote, "What's your name?" "Ira," she answered, surprised. "What?" "I'm lost and looking for the surgical department." "Oh, so it's downstairs." Lenya nodded, but didn't leave. He continued to look at the girl, and something in his chest was squeezing, making it hard to breathe. Too similar. Not just similar, but a spitting image. His Marina. "You know, you look a lot like my daughter," he finally said. "I didn't mean to scare you, sorry." Quote. Ira shrugged. "Well, it happens." Lenya visited Marina and looked in on Ira. He found out that her mother worked here as a nurse and that the girl was almost always alone. He brought chocolates, asked about school and her friends. Ira got used to him, and they even became friends somehow. One day he saw a pink comb on the table. Ira had just braided her hair. Leonid, without thinking, took a few hairs. His hands were shaking, and the thought that was stuck in his head seemed absolutely delirious, but he couldn't let her go. The examination confirmed what he already suspected. The probability of paternity was 99.9. Leonid sat in the expert's office and couldn't move. How? How did his daughter end up with strangers? He was told that one of the twins did not survive. The midwife told him, what was her name? Zoya. He remembered her face, gray and exhausted. She had stood in front of him then and lied, looking straight into his eyes. He began to sort it out, but the documents were in order. The midwife who had delivered the child had died, and it turned out that she was the mother of the very same nurse who had raised his daughter. Leonid found Lilia, Zoya Filipovna's friend. "You need to tell me the truth," he said, his voice trembling with rage. "What happened 12 years ago?" Lilia was silent for a long time, then sighed. "I don't know for sure, but I can guess. Zoya switched the children. Gave your daughter to her Lena. I think she was trying to save her from grief. Or maybe she was just going crazy from exhaustion and pain, I don't know for sure." Quote. Leonid covered his face with his hands. "Zoya suffered until her death. She loved Irochka more than life itself and died from taking her away from you." "That's no excuse," Leonid croaked. "I know, but that's the truth." Quote. He met with Lena. When she found out why he came, she wasn't even surprised. "Take her, I don't care," she said indifferently. "I never felt like she was mine. I thought I was a bad mother, but it turns out she's simply not my child." "How can you say that?" Leonid couldn't believe his ears. "You raised her for 12 years. "No, I raised her, my mother. I didn't need children at all." Leonid left, clenching his fists. This woman didn't even deserve contempt. He came to his daughters, sat them down next to each other on the sofa and took their hands. "I need to tell you something." Marina listened with wide eyes. Ira was silent, and tears slowly streamed down her cheeks. "So, I'm not her daughter," she whispered when Leonid finished. "You are my sister and Daddy's girl, and we love you." Marina hugged her, "And it turns out that Grandma stole me." Leonid sighed. "Yes, she did the wrong thing, but I understand she loved you too and suffered greatly from what she did. Sometimes people make mistakes, terribly wrong." Irochka moved in with Leonid. The first few weeks were difficult. The girls were adjusting to each other, learning to be sisters. But gradually, everything improved for the twins. They seemed completely inseparable. Lena eventually met a man, a simple, kind farmer from a neighboring region, and went to be with him. But before leaving, she stopped by to see Ira. "Forgive me, I couldn't become a mother, but I'm happy for you that you found your family." Ira nodded. She wasn't angry anymore, she had simply let go of that betrayal. Sometimes she would come to the cemetery to visit her grandmother's grave, bring flowers, clean up the trash, and sit on the bench next to her. "Grandma, I'm not offended anymore, so don't worry anymore. I hope you're doing well." The wind rustled the leaves, and it seemed as if Zoya, somewhere up there in heaven, heard these words and quietly cried. When Irina turned 18, she decided to become a midwife. Marina laughed. "What, do you want to follow in your grandma's footsteps?" Ira replied, "I just want to help people bring children into this world and never make mistakes." And Leonid, listening to his daughter's dreams, was overjoyed like a father. If you like this story, please support me with a thumbs up button. It's just one action for you, but it means a lot to me. Thank you.